That was EFF leader Julius Malema, a very strong response after a very senior journalist, Jacques Poe, tweeted a map showing where his residence was in Hyde Park, including the type of car that his wife drives. Earlier, he was responding to the new prosecutions boss, and let's get back to Shamila Batohi, who has the hopes of South Africa on her shoulder to discuss. We're joined by Tiso Black Star legal journalist Karyn Maughan and independent constitutional analyst Phephelaphi Dube. They're both in our studio in Seapoint. Welcome to you both. Phephelaphi, let me start with you. Was this a good move? Because it seems like she has been so welcomed, really a conspicuous lack of criticism today.
Well, I think in so far as she made a very good impression in her interview, in terms of the fact that she didn't shy away from the various issues that have bedeviled the National Prosecuting Authority, namely the political interference and the apparent factions, and the fact that she was quite apparent that these are the problems, and she was quite apparent that she was up to the challenge. And not just that, but she brings a lot of experience, both prosecutorial experience and also managerial experience. And perhaps the fact that she's been out of the country for so long, it means that she hasn't been tainted by the various scandals that have beset the National Prosecuting Authority in the last recent years. And of course, importantly, the fact that she is South Africa's very first woman national director of public prosecution. So I think all of these factors weigh in her favor, and she is certainly an appointment that is to be reckoned with.
Let's bring up a mini bio of Shamila Batohi. She will assume the post, you remember, in February next year. Just a little bit about her. She's been a legal advisor at the International Criminal Court, and she will serve notice there. She was the evidence leader during the King Commission that investigated the Hansie Cronje match-fixing scandal in cricket. So Karyn, my question to you, Phephelaphi says she's untainted in a sense because she left the NPA for a while, served in The Hague, but is there a danger at all that she's lost touch with the system here?
I don't think so. I mean, one of the things that she addressed in her interview was the fact that she's been part of international prosecutorial associations for quite some time. You know, just in Johannesburg a month ago, as part of an association meeting, she has very close connections with a number of prosecutors, and she's very alive to the fact of what's going on in terms of the NPA and the state that it's in. She directly addressed that. She described the NPA as a mess. I know that, someone like Billy Downer, the lead prosecutor in the Zuma case, has a great deal of respect for her. She is regarded quite highly. She has served previously as the DPP in KZN, which has always been a politically contentious province in terms of the prosecution's approach there. And I think that she brings a lot to the table in terms of her understanding. Remember, this was a woman that 5 years ago on your very channel had to come and defend the ICC against allegations that it was effectively only targeting African leaders in terms of gross human rights prosecutions, and did so very, very adequately. So she's not scared of controversy. She's not scared to answer tough questions, and she has the intelligence and aptitude to do so. The real question is, does she enjoy genuine political support? And is the executive in this country really going to show her the respect in terms of respecting her decisions and not attempting, as previous ministers and individuals have in the past, to intervene in her decisions?
So like you say, she's strong, but I guess what you're saying is she will push back either way. This is one of the toughest jobs around. Karyn, we've got the highest, one of the highest murder rates. We've got corruption, crime against women and children, factionalism in the NPA. She said that the NPA is like a house on fire.
Also remember, Francis, that the NPA is suffering very, very deep budgetary constraints. At the moment, there are over 200 posts that are frozen and vacant. These are vital prosecutorial posts. The NPA is spending huge amounts of money on basically defending its decisions to prosecute in numerous court cases, everything from politically connected businessman Thoshin Pandey to the so-called SARS rogue unit case, the case against Johan Boyson, the Cato Manor case, even the decision to prosecute Julius Malema himself over those incitement charges, the legislation that's being used to charge him in terms of that. also under challenge. So the NPA's credibility crisis is having real impact on its ability to actually take prosecutions into court. And this is forcing it, in many instances, to go to court to defend those decisions rather than actually prosecute. She knows that there are resource issues, and that's why it was very interesting during her interview how she stressed the need for the president to potentially, approve an investigative directorate within the NPA that would very much resemble the Scorpions unit as it then was, but which would be supported by, amongst other people, the Auditor General, civil society, and the private sector. Because at this point, the NPA simply does not have the resources it needs to do the kind of strong forensic investigations that will guarantee corruption prosecutions that are successful. And it's very unfortunate that just a few hours, 5 hours to be exact, before the president announced this appointment, the NPA was forced to withdraw the corruption prosecution, or the fraud and money laundering prosecution against a number of Gupta family members and associates in the Estina matter. That was the primary state capture case that the NPA was taking forward, and simply unable to go ahead because it had not secured the evidence it needed to take that case to court.
And we have to talk about Jacob Zuma's corruption case as well. But first, Phephelaphi, just looking at the dysfunction that Karyn has outlined, even if she receives support, how long will it take to turn the National Prosecuting Authority into an effective crime-fighting machine?
Well, it's obviously difficult to give an exact time frame, but just bearing in mind the fact that we've never had a single head of the National Prosecuting Authority complete a term, and the fact that it's really taken more than 2 decades to get the National Prosecuting Authority to where it is, one would suggest that it would take almost the same amount of time to not only bring back the credibility of the National Prosecuting Authority, but also ensure that there are effective conviction rates, given the large, given the fact that we have such high rates of criminality in South Africa. But of course, it's also important to note that it's not just about the National Prosecuting Authority on its own. I think the last 10 years have really been characterized by a decimation of key state institutions which would assist the National Prosecuting Authority to conduct its work. So that said, it's not up to the National Prosecuting Authority alone. I think if we look, for example, to the South African Prosecuting Authority itself, if we look at SARS, for example, I think these are bodies which should be helping the National Prosecuting Authority to ultimately achieve its function. But given the fact that at the moment, there are all these allegations of political interference, of state capture, it's perhaps debatable to the extent to which the National Prosecuting Authority could get back on the right track and restore credibility within the South African public's eyes.
All right, so she really has a tough job ahead of her. Let's hear from our viewers. We asked you earlier, if you had a hotline to the new prosecution's boss, what matters do you think she should deal with first? Let's take a listen.
I'd like to comment on the appointment of Advocate Batohi. Yes, she is good to others, but from my side, she still carries that stigma that she refused to prosecute Magnus Malan, and on the family killings of the current chairperson of community safety in the KZN legislature, Honorable Ntoli's family was massacred, and she failed to prosecute all those people, and she just gave a lame excuse. But anyway, we wish that she will change and she will stick by the book. Ungqobolo.
Good afternoon. My name is Obed. I would like to comment about the new Director of Public Prosecutions. I think this is very, very good for the country, considering that she's experienced and she's the first woman. I think she's going to do well. And on my side, what I think she'll tackle the issues of corruption across the country, it's very rife and it's very much alive. So the issues of corruption, it's what she needs to sort out above all. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
And thank you for your comment. Karyn, I don't know if you heard that first viewer there talking about Magnus Milan. I don't know if you can comment about that specific case. But yes, prosecutions directors, she was a director in KZN, have to make hard decisions. There were even claims of racism. Is that all par for the course?
Well, remember with the so-called apartheid era cases, we know that Vusi Piccoli went on affidavit in the Nokuthula Simelane matter and said that there was a certain agenda pushed by the executive at the time that those so-called apartheid era matters would not be pursued. We know there were obviously definitive exceptions in terms of the prosecution of Adrian Vlok for the attempted poisoning of Frank Chikane, for example. But we know that there was a definitive push from the executive that those kind of matters would not be touched because there was a fear that there would be a tit for tat, that if certain members of the nationalist establishment were targeted for prosecution, the reverse could happen to certain members of the ANC. Now, that decision is obviously up for debate, but I don't think you can necessarily blame Shamila Batohi for that kind of determination. However, we have seen a shift in terms of the NPA. We have seen the NPA pursuing, for example, the prosecution of Nokuthula Simelane's alleged murderers. We know the Ahmed Timur matter, for example, is proceeding, and we may well see those kind of matters revisited under her tenure, but it was a political decision that was taken at the time, rightly or wrongly, and I'm not sure it's entirely fair to blame her for that.
Well, Karyn, staying with you, you mentioned the Guptas earlier. One of the stains on the NPA is also this flip-flopping around the prosecution of former President Jacob Zuma. Now, he's trying for the stay of prosecution. Is that really all out of her hands, as it were?
No, it is out of her hands. It's now in the hands of the court. The National Prosecuting Authority, of course, has 2 months to respond to the former president's averments that his entire prosecution has been tainted by political interference and that the undue delay in charging him, particularly with his former financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, means that this case is so unbelievably tainted that it simply cannot proceed. He says it's been going on for 16 years and he cannot be expected to now remember the events for which he stands accused of corruption in full, and it's simply unfair to put him in that position. We know that French arms company Thales is taking a similar line. The NPA under Billy Downer will have to respond to those averments. She was not really part of that case in any significant way. She will obviously have certain oversight over it, but it is out of her hands. It will be in the hands of the High Court to decide ultimately if the president succeeds in having that case permanently stayed or if this trial finally goes to court some 16 years later.
All right, so Phephelaphi, so the big case, Jacob Zuma, is out of her hands. Where should we start? What are the low-lying cases? Who should she go after first?
Well, I think in order to restore the public confidence, I think it's important for the National Prosecuting Authority to at least secure a conviction in one of the big matters involving politically connected individuals, whether we're talking about individuals associated to the governing party or whether we're talking about individuals who've been named in the so-called Gupta leaks in the state capture saga. I think it's important for her to ensure a conviction in one of these big matters. But not just that, but it's also important for her to then ensure that, because as we all know, there's been a decimation or a hollowing out of skilled personnel within the upper echelons of the ranks of the National Prosecuting Authority. So it is important for her to create confidence in skilled individuals who are able to take the National Prosecuting Authority forward, because obviously it's not a task that rests on her shoulders alone. It's just important that she's surrounded by capable people who are able to effectively discharge the functions of the National Prosecuting Authority in terms of both the Act as well as the Constitution.
Karyn, I don't know if you saw the EFF earlier, Julius Malema saying he hopes that she will have no fear or favour in going after ANC politicians, but the EFF itself feeling the heat. So I guess she'll have to tackle corruption across parties as fairly as possible.
Well, there can be absolutely no dispute about the fact that Shamila Batohi is walking into a political minefield. Not only do we have the VBS report that was completed by the Reserve Bank in which, the EFF has been reportedly linked in a number of stories. Of course, they claim that this is wrongful. But we also have, the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, laying charges of crimen injuria against Julius Malema for certain utterances that were made outside the Zondo Commission. Julius Malema, in turn, laying charges against Pravin Gordhan. So, she's walking into a minefield, and there will be, no doubt that those who potentially face prosecution by the NPA in this kind of environment will be making a lot of noise about it. There has been this constant rhetoric of political interference, and she will know well that, any decision that she makes to prosecute a person with kind of political influence is going to be subject to criticism, is going to be subject to a lot of noise. But I think what should give us all hope is that she emphasized throughout her interview for the NDP position and through her address today that she really puts rule of law at the forefront of all that she does. And in the end of the day, all she can do is look at the evidence, look at the law, the appropriate legal framework, and apply that without fear or favor, because that is what is constitutionally demanded of her.
Yeah, and today she kept on emphasizing the rule of law, implying that the NPA has not always followed the rule of law. We're running out of time, so Phephelaphi, I'd like to end with you. Just try and give us a sense of how important the National Director of Public Prosecutions is for our constitutional democracy.
Well, the National Prosecuting Authority plays a vital role in terms of being the ultimate accountability mechanism in the country. And in that sense, it's supposed to be a politically neutral body that ensures that members of the executive, or even politically connected individuals, or even individuals who exercise or wield a certain amount of power within South Africa's society, are brought to book if they are found to be in the wrong. So in a sense, it's very much an organization which if it's functioning in terms of its core mandate, is supposed to bring South African society together, whether we're talking about ensuring that there's justice for petty criminals or justice for individuals who have been found to be on the wrong side of the law. So in that sense, the National Prosecuting Authority plays a vital function. And in fact, one could almost describe it as one of the backbone institutions of South Africa's society.
All right, thank you so much. Indeed, this is so crucial. It's about putting the criminals in jail, not just having them arrested. And Shamila Batohi receiving a lot of support today. A lot of South Africans wishing her all the best, the new National Director of Public Prosecutions. That was Tiso Black Star legal journalist Karyn Maughan and independent constitutional analyst Phephelaphi Dube. Thank you both. And let's get some more reaction from viewers in Zinga.